Prince Edward's announcement about bidding farewell to Buckingham Palace has sent shockwaves across the royal circle and beyond. What could have compelled him, the youngest child of the late Queen Elizabeth II, into such a momentous decision? Is it personal freedom he seeks? An inner rift with the other members of his family? Or another step into the redefined roles of today's royalty? Join us as we explore the layers of this surprising development, exploring the motivations, implications, and what this means for the future of the House of Windsor. The announcement that shocked everyone. Prince Edward, the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, has always stood apart from his royal siblings.
It's difficult really to explain what it is to be together as a family for the first time. Just wonderful.
Born on March 10, 1964, at Buckingham Palace, Edward was raised in the public eye, but often preferred a quieter, more behind-the-scenes role in the monarchy. Unlike his elder brothers, King Charles III and Prince Andrew, Edward steered away from a traditional military career, choosing instead to forge a path in the arts and media. After graduating from Cambridge University with a degree in history, Edward worked briefly at the theatre company Andrew Lloyd Webber founded, before establishing his own production company, Ardent Productions, in 1993. Although his company faced criticism for its management and content, Edward's ventures highlighted his desire to carve out an independent identity. But this is where it begins to get interesting.
Personally, trying to run the team and trying to find the ideas and in the long term actually producing as well.
What kind of production?
In 1999, he married Sophie Rhys-Jones, now the Duchess of Edinburgh.
But the niceties of royal lineage were probably the last thing on their minds as they made their first public appearance as man and wife.
And the couple became prominent figures in the royal family. Over the years, Edward has taken on numerous royal duties and became the Earl of Wessex, later ascending to the title of Duke of Edinburgh following his father's passing. His role within the monarchy expanded, but his understated demeanor often contrasted with the headline-grabbing actions of other royals. In a surprising move, Prince Edward recently announced his decision to step back from Buckingham Palace, signaling a shift in his royal trajectory.
It's been a bit of a shock. However much one tries to prepare oneself for something like this, it's still a dreadful shock, and we're still trying to come to terms with that. And it's very, very sad.
Such actions by him are not new, but they are shocking. This is because in a decision that surprised many and broke with family tradition, Prince Edward, Queen Elizabeth's youngest son, once stepped away from a future in the Royal Marines. At just 22 years old, Edward had been undergoing rigorous training in hopes of earning the prestigious Green Beret of the Royal Marines, Britain's elite military unit. However, after serving 4 challenging months of a year-long officers' training course, he chose to resign, a move that came after much personal deliberation and a tense family discussion. Buckingham Palace confirmed his decision, stating that Edward had resigned after much consideration and with significant regret, having concluded that the Marines were not the right fit for his long-term aspirations. The palace also mentioned that no announcement about his plans was imminent. Edward's resignation followed a weekend summit at the royal family's Sandringham estate in Norfolk. There, he presented his case during what was reportedly a difficult conversation involving the Queen, his father, Prince Philip, his elder brothers Prince Charles and Prince Andrew, and Princess Diana. While none of the family members were reported to have supported his choice, Edward stood firm, explaining that continuing in a career he disliked would leave him trapped. Shortly after this meeting, Edward returned to his training base at Lympstone, southwestern England, where he formally handed in his resignation and uniform to his commanding officer.
So what actually happened this morning? Prince Edward came and said goodbye to his batch officers in the officers' mess, and then he went and said goodbye to the other officers in the officers' mess, and we shook him warmly by the hand, and we wished him very well, and he wished us well.
Prince Philip, who holds the honorary title of Captain General of the Marines, was said to have been particularly displeased. The decision was perceived by some as a rejection of the family's strong military tradition, given that Edward's father and both of his brothers held commissions in the Royal Navy. The prince's struggle became public knowledge when London newspapers highlighted his predicament the week before the resignation. A poll conducted during that period revealed that most Britons believed Edward should be allowed to leave if that was his wish, reflecting a wave of public support for the young royal's autonomy. Why would someone walk away from a path so deeply rooted in family legacy? For Edward, the answer was clear: personal fulfillment. Reports suggested he was considering a career in theater, a passion that contrasted sharply with the rigid structure of military life. Despite the pressure and disapproval from his family, Edward chose to prioritize his happiness and aspirations over tradition. Is this a sign of weakness, as some critics suggested, or an act of courage in defying expectations? The answer lies in Edward's ability to stand firm against immense pressure and make a decision true to himself, a move that resonates with those who value authenticity over convention. This unexpected farewell has left many speculating about his motivations. Buckingham Palace, a symbol of the monarchy's enduring presence, has long been the epicenter of royal life, making Edward's departure all the more significant. Reports suggest that Edward and Sophie plan to focus on their residence at Bagshot Park, located in Surrey. Their decision comes amid broader changes within the royal family, as King Charles III continues to streamline the monarchy and redefine its role in modern Britain. Edward's departure may reflect his desire to support the king's vision, while maintaining a more personal, family-oriented lifestyle. Edward's departure from Buckingham Palace raises questions about the evolving nature of royal responsibilities and the balance between public duty and personal life. His decision follows the precedent set by other royals, such as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who have redefined their roles within the family. However, unlike Harry's dramatic exit, Edward's move appears to be a quiet transition rather than a break from royal life. He remains committed to his royal duties, including his involvement with the Duke of Edinburgh's award and his patronages. His departure signifies a subtle yet impactful shift, symbolizing the monarchy's efforts to adapt to contemporary expectations while respecting the individuality of its members. As Prince Edward bids farewell to Buckingham Palace, his next steps will undoubtedly determine his legacy. By focusing on family life and charitable endeavors, he continues to embody the values of dedication and service instilled by Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. But one may wonder what really makes a person want to leave everything that Buckingham Palace stands for behind. The constant criticism, pressure, and lack of freedom tied to being a royal can make someone want to leave it all behind. For Prince Edward, trying to build a life outside the royal family came with endless judgment. Every mistake was blown out of proportion, and his family and the public rarely let him forget it. Add in the media's harsh spotlight and family tensions, and it's easy to see how the strict rules and high expectations of royal life could feel suffocating. For someone wanting to live their own life, walking away from Buckingham Palace and all it stands for might feel like the only escape. Prince Edward's attempt to leave royal life and establish himself in the entertainment industry was a bold and tumultuous journey. Edward had long been captivated by the allure of show business. As he once said, he loved the razzmatazz of show business, and that it's a wonderful world of fantasy and make-believe.
And really what he wanted to try to do was to find a means to be able to inspire them to get involved in all sorts of activities. But I think more importantly
Edward's early forays into entertainment revealed his passion and ambition, but also met with controversy. At Cambridge, he participated in school plays and later produced the Grand Knockout Tournament in 1987, a charity event ridiculed as the single most damaging attack upon the royal family since Cromwell.
His Royal Highness, the tantalizingly eligible Prince Edward, coaxing courage.
Undeterred, Edward joined Andrew Lloyd Webber's Really Useful Group and co-founded a theatrical production company in 1990. However, that venture failed within a year, accumulating £600,000 in debt. In 1993, Edward took his most daring step yet. He launched Ardent Productions, a company he claimed symbolized ambition, motivation, and strength. With dreams of producing serious arts, drama, and documentaries for British television, Edward downplayed his royal connections, insisting Ardent would avoid creating royal-themed programs. His business cards simply read, Edward Windsor, Joint Managing Director. However, the entertainment industry was skeptical. To many, Edward was just a prince playing at being a producer, and he faced considerable jealousy and scrutiny. His family also expressed doubts. Prince Philip reportedly quipped, asking, "Why doesn't Edward let the TV people get on with it?" and just turned up to accept the checks. He further stated that he was making the royal family look foolish. These misgivings seem justified as Ardent stumbled through its early years. The company's first production, Real Tennis, a documentary on an obscure aristocratic sport, drew only 8,000 viewers. Its next effort, the political satire Annie's Bar, was cancelled after one season and panned as fifth-rate. Faced with mounting criticism and financial losses, Edward pivoted. In 1996, he hosted Edward on Edward, a documentary about his great-uncle, Edward VIII. Though critics mocked it for lacking insight and originality, the program performed surprisingly well. Yet Edward's decision to lean into his royal connections invited further backlash. Journalists accused him of hypocrisy, and competitors in the industry resented the palace support Ardent received, such as exclusive footage and interviews with senior royals. But it doesn't end here, and this next detail will amaze you. Edward's challenges weren't confined to his company. His wife, Sophie, faced scandals of her own, including being duped in 2001 by a fake sheikh posing as a PR client. This, coupled with Edward's mounting controversies, led to a review of royal business dealings. By 2001, the royal family issued stricter guidelines for working royals engaging in commercial ventures. Ardent's most significant misstep came in 2000, when it began producing Royalty AZ, a series for E covering the Windsor family's history. This included recent, sensitive events that infuriated Prince Charles. When it emerged that Ardent had filmed near Prince William during his time at St. Andrews, Charles reportedly exploded, calling Edward a negative name. Public criticism of Ardent reached a fever pitch, with some branding it a vanity project and a sad joke. By 2002, Edward conceded defeat. He stepped down from Ardent, citing the Queen's Golden Jubilee and increased royal duties as his reasons. Despite his optimistic farewell statement, Ardent limped on briefly before being liquidated in 2009 and officially dissolved in 2011 with just £40.27 remaining. Though his dream of media success ended, Edward and Sophie eventually found their footing as full-time working royals, respected for their dedication in the years following the Queen's death, Prince Andrew's scandals, and Harry and Meghan's departure. Edward's struggles reveal the challenges of balancing royal identity with personal ambition, a lesson that may be relatable with Harry and Meghan as they go through their own post-royal ventures. As Edward once lamented, "It's a no-win situation, so it doesn't matter which side of the fence you jump off." How was life at Buckingham Palace for Edward before he resolved to leave? Let's take a look. Life at Buckingham Palace. As the youngest of the Queen's 4 children, Edward's life in Buckingham Palace was both privileged and highly structured. Surrounded by the grandeur of royal living, Edward had a unique upbringing that balanced protocol with personal warmth. Buckingham Palace, both a home and the official residence of the monarch, provided a setting full of ceremonial duties and a high degree of discipline. Edward and his siblings, Charles, Anne, and Andrew, were being taken care of by a retinue of nannies and staff, but were also closely looked after by their parents. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, despite their demanding schedules, made time for family, often gathering in the private quarters of the palace for meals or evening chats. In these early years of Edward's life, there were the big set pieces of state visits, while days would often be passed playing in the vast gardens at Buckingham Palace. At Buckingham Palace, Edward was encouraged to pursue his academic and artistic interests. He was educated privately before attending Gordonstoun School in Scotland, where he followed in his father and brother's footsteps. His love for drama and theatre emerged early on and continued to develop as he attended Cambridge University, earning a degree in history. Returning to Buckingham Palace after his studies, Edward began taking on royal duties and exploring a career in the arts. He worked briefly with the Andrew Lloyd Webber Theatre Company before founding Ardent Productions, a television production company. This choice set him apart from his siblings, as Edward carved a unique path blending creative pursuits with royal responsibilities. As Edward embraced his role as a working royal, Buckingham Palace remained a central hub for his duties. Whether hosting receptions or attending official events, the palace symbolized both his public responsibilities and private connections. Edward also resided for periods at Buckingham Palace before establishing his family home at Bagshot Park with his wife, Sophie, Countess of Wessex. But here's a very interesting detail. Prince Andrew reportedly bullied his younger brother, Prince Edward, during their childhood, according to royal biographer Ingrid Seward.
We all loved him, and he was like everybody's slightly wayward son. And you wanted to hug him, and he said, "Oh, I don't like the press." And he said, "Oh, darling, I understand, but you've got to do it." And I suppose he was very childlike, really.
Despite Andrew's domineering behavior, Edward eventually outshone him, excelling academically and socially at their secondary school, Gordonstoun. Edward surpassed Andrew by becoming a head boy and earning a spot on the cricket First 11 team. In her 1993 book, Royal Children, Seward, the editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, detailed the relationship between the two princes. Being 4 years apart and much younger than their older siblings, Prince Charles and Princess Anne, neither Andrew nor Edward faced the intense responsibilities of being the Queen's heir or only daughter. However, Andrew was known for his boisterous nature and frequent tantrums, which included competitive behavior, such as snatching treats intended for Edward. In contrast, Edward, described as a sweet and well-mannered child with delicate features, initially lived in Andrew's shadow during their early education under a governess at Buckingham Palace. While Andrew expressed his frustration with outbursts, Edward tended to internalize his emotions, often falling silent with a red face. As they grew older, Edward distinguished himself at Gordonstown, excelling in sports, drama, and leadership, while Andrew's path diverged. Edward eventually attended Cambridge University, though his grades were notably below the usual standard for admission. Meanwhile, Andrew pursued a military career, joining the Navy and achieving considerable success. Although Edward initially planned to follow a similar path by joining the Royal Marines, he withdrew from officer training after 4 months, opting for a different course in life.
The news was received with natural disappointment that His Royal Highness had come to this decision. But I would like to say that we respect that decision. We respect that decision. We fully understand his reasons.
The life he opted for was a private one. But was it really private? And what were the challenges it brought him? Keep watching to find out. Hidden life and bad impressions. Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, and his wife Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, have long been loyal supporters of the Crown and held in high regard by the late Queen Elizabeth II. Despite their significant roles within the royal family, they have worked hard to maintain a low profile when it comes to their personal lives. This dedication to privacy has made them less familiar to many royal fans compared to more high-profile members of the family. Yet, Edward is far from an enigma. Over the years, he has taken on increasing responsibilities, becoming a core member of the royal family. His history reveals fascinating and complex dimensions, including rumored sibling feuds, disagreements over royal titles, and a strained relationship with the press. These aspects hint at the layers behind a man who is often misunderstood. How did this reserved prince manage to balance tradition, duty, and his desire for privacy? One of the most visible aspects of royal duty is public engagement. Traditionally, royals meet their loyal subjects during events, often greeting them with a handshake. This practice of mingling with the public, known as a walkabout, was popularized by Queen Elizabeth II, who wanted a more personal connection with her subjects. Over time, this became an expectation, with royals such as Princess Diana and Kate Middleton adopting the practice. However, Edward has chosen to deviate from this norm. While he waves and speaks to crowds, he avoids shaking hands, explaining that it allows him to speak to more people in the limited time available. His decision, while practical,
It's for Netflix.
Yep.
So it goes all around the world, which is quite scary.
Yeah, but you'll get that every now and you bump into somebody, they'll go, "Oh, yeah. How do you? I don't know you."
underscores his unique approach to royal duties, balancing tradition with personal efficiency. Edward's personal life, particularly his relationship with Sophie, also reveals this desire for balance and discretion. The couple's story began in 1987, when they met at Capital Radio, where Sophie was working in public relations. They reconnected years later when Sophie managed publicity for a charity tennis event Edward was organizing. Their connection grew, and they began dating secretly, away from the public eye. Despite their efforts, the press eventually discovered their relationship. In response, Edward appealed directly to the media, requesting they respect his privacy and that of Sophie, whom he wanted to protect from invasive coverage. As the relationship became public, Sophie began accompanying Edward to royal events. However, the couple resisted public pressure to rush into an engagement, taking 6 years to marry.
And did you say yes immediately?
I was slightly stunned for a minute, and then I suddenly realised I should actually answer the question, so then I said yes. I said yes, please.
Edward, having witnessed the turbulent relationships of his older siblings, was determined to avoid their mistakes. This cautious approach demonstrated his commitment to building a stable foundation for their future together. In his early years, Edward's attempts to shield his private life sometimes backfired. His rare television interview about his relationship with Sophie, meant to calm public speculation, left some with a negative impression. His strong words about wanting privacy were interpreted by some as arrogance. At one point, he bluntly told reporters to mind their own business regarding his decision to propose. While his frustration was understandable, his tone alienated parts of the public. After receiving their new titles as the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Prince Edward and his wife Sophie made their first public appearance on March 10, 2023. The couple met with members of the Ukrainian community outside of Edinburgh's city chambers. While their graceful step into their new roles delighted royal fans, it also sparked concerns about Prince Edward's health. But that's not all. Observers noticed that Edward appeared noticeably thinner, leading some to worry that he might be unwell. OhMyMag, via MSN News, cited a Twitter user who asked, "Is the Earl of Wessex ill? He has suddenly lost so much weight." Others agreed, pointing out his increasingly slim appearance. Speculation ranged from illness to the effects of stress or grief, given Edward had lost both his parents in a short span. Despite the public concern, no official sources have indicated that Edward is unwell. The German publication Bunte reported that Buckingham Palace assured them, "Everything is fine, Prince Edward is fine," though no concrete proof of this statement was provided. Prince Edward was granted the title of Duke of Edinburgh by King Charles for his 59th birthday in March 2023.
King Charles has named his youngest brother, Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, a title held, of course, by his late father, Prince Philip, for more than 70 years. It had been the late Prince's wish for Prince Edward to be granted the dukedom after his death.
Previously, Edward held the title of Earl of Wessex. The Duke of Edinburgh title, held by their late father, Prince Philip, for over 70 years, carried significant emotional weight. Many had anticipated Edward would inherit it, as Queen Elizabeth had reportedly promised the title to him before her passing. However, the process wasn't straightforward. King Charles initially considered saving the title for his granddaughter, Princess Charlotte, as part of his vision to modernize and slim down the monarchy. This decision reportedly hurt Edward, who has been a loyal supporter of Charles, especially during controversies involving their brother, Prince Andrew. Ultimately, Charles decided to honor his younger brother, but some sources speculate that he may have arranged for the title to revert to the crown after Edward's death, rather than passing it to Edward's son, James, now Earl of Wessex. Interestingly, Edward's earlier title choice reflected his personal preferences. On his wedding day in 1999, rather than receiving a dukedom, Edward requested to be named Earl of Wessex. According to the Mirror, Edward was inspired by the character Lord Wessex in the film Shakespeare in Love and asked the Queen for this unique title. The Queen obliged, and Edward became the first of her sons not to hold a dukedom at that time. After their marriage, Edward and Sophie initially pursued private careers alongside their royal duties. However, by 2002, they transitioned to full-time royal roles during the Queen's Golden Jubilee year. Over the years, Sophie focused her efforts on supporting programs for women and children, while Edward championed the arts through his royal patronages. Now, As the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Edward and Sophie have taken on even greater responsibilities. Their work shows the legacy of Prince Philip, as Edward follows in his father's footsteps, while continuing to carve out his unique path in royal service. Over time, however, perceptions of Edward and Sophie have softened. Their dedication to their royal duties, coupled with their enduring marriage, has earned them respect and admiration.
You want to say hello for me? I'll be there as well. Of course, fuzzy brown nose. Harry, do you want to show your brown nose? Oh, wow, amazing. Coming along, yours is...
Their story reveals a man striving to reconcile his public responsibilities with his private values. In hindsight, was the fierce defense of his personal life a misstep or a necessary stand for his principles? Perhaps it was both, showing the complexity of a life lived under constant public view. Would you leave everything behind if you were in Prince Edward's shoes to find your own path in life? Kindly share your answers, thoughts, and opinions in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel to enjoy more videos like this. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.